Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to CEO Club Pakistan. This is Naushin Tariq. We were Mr. Adnan Afridi, Managing Director, National Investment Trust Limited. Join us today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
कैसे हैं आप?
Good, thank you.
Sir, let's start with your professional journey. How you take off, and the journey with your NIT, with the challenges in a nutshell, please.
Sure. So I'm trained as a corporate lawyer, but I did not practice. I went into strategy consulting. So the early part of my career focused on advisory in the US and in Europe. I moved back to Pakistan about 20 years ago and have been involved primarily in private equity advisory. About 10 years ago, I became the CEO of the Karachi Stock Exchange, which is now the Pakistan Stock Exchange. Prior to that, I was also the CEO of the Overseas Investors Chamber of Commerce and Industry, OICCI, which represents major foreign investors operating in Pakistan. More recently, I've been involved in the boards of some banks. So primarily, my career in Pakistan is focused on financial services. And then recently, about 6 months ago, the government appointed me as a member of the SECP policy board. And then subsequently, I was named as the managing director of NIT.
NIT. And so this, mashallah, a successful journey, challenges.
Well, whenever you take on assignments which are public sector or even quasi-public sector, the stock exchange is, of course, a private sector organization, and NIT is a mix which has private and public shareholding. You always face additional scrutiny. You always face a lot of media spotlight, and often I think often facts are distorted. So in addition to the commercial challenges that these organizations require attention, you're also facing these personal criticisms that are thrown your way. So I think that mix is an interesting professional challenge to address.
Okay. So NIT.
Yes. So NIT is Pakistan's oldest and largest asset management company, founded in 1962. In fact, it is the genesis of the mutual fund industry in Pakistan. NIT has a flagship equity fund called NIUT, and I think NIT units are synonymous with savings and investments in Pakistan. Almost, I think all our collective parents and grandparents at some point have bought NIT units. So our equity fund still remains the largest equity fund in Pakistan, representing over 55% of the total market size of equity funds in Pakistan. And even overall, our assets under management are the largest or amongst the largest in Pakistan, although some private sector mutual funds have caught up to us. At the moment, we have a total number of funds are 10, and they range across various equity, fixed income, and money market classes, as well as Islamic and conventional. We are spread throughout Pakistan, have 25 branches, adding them almost every month. We are adding a branch, but also, of course, in today's age, you have to look at a digital strategy. So we have embarked very recently at a fairly aggressive online strategy, which will be rolled out in the next 90 to 120 days.
Okay, so the people who are not very much familiar with the financials and digits, so what's the difference between the investment in the stock exchange and NIT?
So there are two types of funds. So first of all, the difference between investing directly and with mutual funds is that when you invest directly, you have to take the time out to research what you're investing in, whether it's one stock or whether it's investing in a fixed income instrument such as a treasury bill or a bank deposit. You have to do your own research to decide how much risk there is, what kind of returns you're going to make, what the pros and cons are of any investment. What a mutual fund does is it takes all of those decisions for you. So it will decide, depending on your profile, what type of risks you should be taking, what kind of returns are more appropriate for your risk profile, and they will manage your funds, whether they are on the equity side or the fixed income side. And for that, they will charge a management fee.
Okay.
So for either for investors who are not familiar with financial markets, or for investors who don't have the time. So most people, they have a day job, they are CEOs, or they may be just working in an organization. They do not have time to look at the stock market all day. So
Yes.
then therefore they invest with mutual funds and trust mutual funds to invest on their behalf. And it is not necessary that they invest their money only in the stock market. Mutual funds also invest in fixed income, such as government bonds, such as sukuks, such as treasury bills, such as PIBs. So there's a whole range of instruments depending on what the investor's risk appetite is and what the investor's aspiration is in terms of return. And depending on that, the mutual fund will offer that investor a range of investment options, and whatever the investor chooses, then the mutual fund will allocate that person's investment accordingly in an appropriate fund.
Okay, sir. National Investment Trust Limited philosophy, vision, your core values.
So, being a pioneer and being a leader adds additional responsibility on NIT. We have two or three core set of stakeholders. First and foremost, of course, is our unit holders, and so we have a fiduciary responsibility to manage their investments in a responsible manner. We also have a responsibility to the nation, because NIT was formed to mobilize capital to be able to invest in businesses so that they can grow. So therefore, we participate in IPOs and we participate in the equity markets in general to help mobilize savings and promote industrial and non-industrial activity in the country. And then the third, of course, our stakeholders are, of course, our employees and our shareholders, which are involved, and a large shareholder is the government, and therefore we have a responsibility to them to make returns and provide dividends. So I think across those stakeholders, that drives our philosophy of doing business. I think one thing that sets NIT apart from others in the industry is that we are long-term patient investors. We do not trade. We do trade regularly, but we are not day traders. So we don't try and come and in and out of the market on a daily basis. We do value investing. We do it at all levels of the market, and we do it for the long haul, which is probably one of the reasons why NIT is the only fund in Pakistan that gives a cash dividend, has given a cash dividend every year in its history that I can recall, and regardless of how the market performs. That the reason we are able to do that is because we have a very, very diversified holding. We are invested in over 400 stocks, which very, very few competitors can reach that kind of depth.
Okay, so key challenges and the opportunities in your sector.
Sure. So I think the key challenge nowadays is obvious to everyone, that the equity markets of Pakistan have not been doing well and have not been doing well for some time. There's a variety of reasons for that: worsening macros, political noise, change in government, and whenever interest rates start going up, they tend to have a inverse correlation with the equity market. So NIUT, of course, being primarily an equity fund, NIUT is an equity fund, but representing a large part of our business, that has meant a reduction in our net asset value. It has also meant that we have faced redemptions. People have withdrawn funds from our accounts because they fear that their values are going down, and that is true across the industry. The challenge is to communicate to the investors that over the long run, equity still represents a very good source of return on your capital. So if you take a 5-year view, 3-year view, 7-year view, and you look at NIUT returns or equity returns in general, they tend to beat other asset classes, but human psyche it's difficult to convince people when markets are going down that this is the time to invest. But I would tell your audience that this is precisely the time to invest for patient long-term investors. The opportunity, other than those who understand the value of equity investing, is that in a rising interest rate environment, there are lots of fixed income instruments, particularly money market funds, which offer very attractive returns. So, in addition to giving tax advantage to both corporates and individuals, money market funds tend to invest in very short-term durations. So, it's like a checking account. You can withdraw your money on any given day, but the return that you get is far higher than you would get on a short-term bank deposit. So that is the opportunity in a rising interest rate environment for our industry.
And sir, इसके साथ ही एक क्वेश्चन लिंक करूंगी, शरिया कंप्लाइंट एज यू सेड, तो कुछ लोगों का ये भी होता है कि इन्वेस्टमेंट में थोड़ा रिलीजियस
जी so I think mutual fund industry in general and NIT in particular, we have Islamic Sharia compliant products. हमारी pension funds हैं जिसमें Sharia compliant pension fund भी है, और we have an Islamic equity fund as well. We have Islamic fixed income funds as well, and I think that's true across the industry. So that option is available to all our investors.
Okay, sir. The current situation of the Pakistan, how you take it, and your comments, please.
I think everybody has their own opinion, but clearly Pakistan is going through a structural transformation. We have been on a consumption-led growth model, which the current government is attempting to change that to a savings and investment-based growth model. That change requires not only a change in strategy, but of course that requires a change in mindset. Both in terms of government policy, but also in terms of investor mindset and consumer mindset. That can sometimes mean some pain in the short term, and it also means dislocations in the market, pricing, and so on, which we are seeing. But if it is successful, then the economy will have a different footing. But we are right now in the middle of that change, so it's very difficult to project where this will go. But in general, what I would again communicate to your audience is that markets tend to overshoot both on the upside and the downside. There are very few, well, I don't know of any market in the world where your dividend yield is higher than your price earning ratios, which is what is happening in Pakistan today. So there are several stocks today whose dividend yield is higher than your price earning ratio, which suggests that their prices have dropped far lower than what should be fundamentally possible. So that represents opportunity again for the savvy investor. And I'm sure that there are people out there who are looking at the same thing that we are.
The current government, you think it's a positive way for the economic prosperity in Pakistan?
So I think any government which comes and implements sustainable growth policies, it would be productive for the people of Pakistan, and I'm sure this government is trying to do the same thing.
Same thing. So something about the leadership. What is leadership to you?
So leadership to me is not well. I think there are several ways to answer that, but I think the best
your own definition.
My own definition. Yeah, that's a difficult one. My own definition would be the ability to see change in your team. So, for a lot of people, sometimes leadership is about leading by example. It is about seeing it in your numbers, in your financial performance. For me, it is about being able to drive change in your team. So it's about being a disruptor without being disruptive. It's about the ability to convince your team that the change that you're trying to drive is something that they adopt as their own. That to me is leadership.
And the challenges you think any leader or business leader confronting in Pakistan?
Well, So in Pakistan, any large or even small commercial organization, in addition to having its specific set of strategic challenges in whatever industry that they operate in, also tend to face regulatory challenges. Over a long period of time, I think Pakistan various sectors in Pakistan have faced over-regulation because the regulator, whoever that may be, whether it's whatever sector it may be, tends to have regulated at the lowest common denominator, meaning that they have regulated at the entity which causes or poses the most risk to the system, and then that tends to penalize the organizations which are much more compliant, which are much more progressive, because they have to face the same level of regulation that an organization which is not compliant. And I think that poses the additional challenge for leadership, because rather than focusing on growing your business, on providing sort of change and growth, you tend to spend a lot of your time in trying to meet or comply with regulations which may not necessarily be applicable to you.
Okay. So, leadership competencies and characteristics of a CEO that you would like to see in our new generation?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see it in my generation too. I think one is the ability to communicate. I have found by and large, and this is not only true of leaders, I think this is true of all levels of organization, that we tend to not communicate as much and as effectively as we should, which leads to inability to collaborate. And I think in today's world, if you don't collaborate, you're not going to succeed. So I think the number one challenge that we face in Pakistan organizationally is the inability to communicate with each other.
You think this is the main?
I believe this is the main issue.
Mainly.
Yeah.
Okay. A CEO success largely depends upon its team. So, what are the three characteristics of a winning team
Yeah.
for you?
Well, so I think it follows from what I said earlier. One is the team has to be able to communicate with each other and hence collaborate. But I think the other characteristic is the team should be willing and able to learn quickly. In today's environment, with regulatory changes, with competition, your entire business model sometimes needs to change very, very quickly, and therefore you have to have the willingness as well as the ability, because I think it's both things. It's a mindset as well as competency to be able to learn on your feet, to be able to adapt very quickly, and I think that's a key ingredient of any successful team.
Okay. As a managing director of NIT, your headache, retention of key people in the company or cash flow?
No, so for me it's neither. For me it's actually to attract additional high quality talent.
Okay.
Retention is not an issue because we are a legacy organization. We have people here for a long time.
Okay.
I think for me the challenge is to be able to attract good talent, professionals to NIT, and to be able to build its brand as a progressive, modern organization which is a leader in its industry.
And the cash flow?
We are, mashallah, a profitable organization, and of course, with the volatility that the industry is facing, we face the same financial pressures that our competition does. But relatively speaking, because we have a lower cost base, we tend to outperform. Tend to outperform our competition in terms of our financial performance.
So, where do you see your organization 5 years down the road?
So I think, first of all, I would like to see NIT be a pioneer. Just like when it was formed, it was the pioneer in equity funds. I believe that we need to be a pioneer now in developing leadership in technology and startup funds, because I think there is a whole technology incubation startup ecosystem in Pakistan, and I think that needs to be supported. And just like NIT back in the 60s did it for the equity market, I believe we should play our role for the startup market. I also think that there is a role for NIT in the private equity space, where growth capital is required for companies, and so I think that the two areas where NIT should come and play a leadership role in the next 5 years are these two areas. In addition to that, internally, I think NIT should transform itself from a purely brick and mortar branch-based organization into a digital online organization where customer acquisition, customer management will all be done online through your mobile phone, through your various touch points, and inshallah in the next 12 months we should be well on our way in doing that.
Inshallah. So you are, mashallah, very active supporter of charitable organizations.
Yes.
I would like you to share your work with us.
So I have always maintained that a certain part of your time, so for most people, I think giving to charity is a way of life in Pakistan, and I think many of my colleagues are very active donors. The stance I have taken is that giving time and giving your management expertise to charitable organizations is extremely valuable. So I, very early on in my professional career, I selected, or I guess they selected me. The Kidney Center, is an organization I've been affiliated with for over 25 years now. Sort of grew through the ranks. I was a volunteer when I was actually in grammar school as a kid, and now I am the chairman of the board, and have been for the last 4 years. Again, started as a 2-bed hospital. Now it's over 100-bed, fully for modern kidney hospital here in Karachi. We perform transplants. We have state-of-the-art dialysis unit, and I take pride in the fact that I'm able to invest a lot of time in that organization.
Definitely, it's pride moment for you. Any achievement you are proud of?
My children.
Great. And what's the toughest decision you have ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So, when you're in a leadership role, you tend to take difficult decisions, sort of a lot. So I don't. You take difficult decisions. So it's difficult to kind of say, what's the toughest decision. I think on a personal level, maybe a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to take on a professionally very attractive and exciting role outside of Pakistan, and I declined because I wanted to continue to contribute to Pakistan, and what I, even though sort of conventional wisdom suggested that what I was turning down, I was being very silly in doing that, but what sort of time has taught me is that no decision is a bad decision as long as you don't dwell on the past and you just move forward.
And taking decision, you follow your gut's feeling, or?
Yes, almost entirely. Yes.
Okay, who is your inspirational role model?
So again, I think there are many, depending on what part of your life you're talking about. But I think in the context that you're talking about, which is your professional, corporate life, I would say Bill Gates is a career that I've followed for many years, and find what he has done to be admirable.
How do you manage your anger or stress?
well, a lot of people would say I don't.
Okay.
But golf, I guess.
Okay.
Golf is something I enjoy, and I think it also helps in dealing with this.
Okay. Define success.
Well, I think success is being able to again see change, not only in the organization in terms of financial performance or whatever strategic objectives you may have set for yourself, but see change in the people around you, in being able to see that they have bought into your vision, or the collective vision that you have set with them for the organization, and see them owning it.
And your idea of happiness?
Contentment.
Contentment.
Yes.
Do you read books? Any of your favorite?
Not as many anymore as I'd like to, but from time to time, yes, I do. I think, again, in the corporate sort of sense, Winning by Jack Welch would be a one that I would recommend to people, yes.
Okay. In the last, any message of optimism for the youth?
Of course, I think youth always have this decision or dilemma to make, that should I take that job in Dubai or in Bahrain, or should I move back to Pakistan and or in fact Europe? And my answer to them is that these are all countries, particularly Europe and US, who've had a great future behind them. Pakistan has a great future ahead of it, and I think if you're young, then there is really very few places in the world where you can come and make a change and make an impact almost immediately. You will very soon be in positions where you can give people jobs, you can impact people's lives, and you can implement real change. And I think that that should be a good enough incentive for all of you to choose Pakistan.
Choose Pakistan. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.